We wanted to share with you today our three biggest obstacles to time management when you're working remotely. Now, we talked about this a little bit and we all felt strongly about different ones. So we're going to do a little round robin today and talk about the ones that we feel most strongly about. And we're going to start with you, Tony. What do you feel like is the biggest obstacle that people are facing right now when managing remotely?
Well, I think the fact that they're managing remotely is an obstacle because they're not used to it. Most people aren't used to it. So that by itself is an obstacle. And it's just all the different distractions for me personally and for a lot of my clients. There's new distractions that didn't exist before. The distraction of information and trying to capture the information, be able to make sense of it, especially in our world where we have to communicate it out to those that work for us or clients or whatever, is difficult to manage. The other distractions that exist are the ones that just happen when you're working out of your house, and especially when you have children that are now at home getting homeschooled. They're having to utilize different technology and space and time, and that's a distraction. And then additionally, it's the distraction of the anxiety that they have, where you as generally a leader, not only in your business but in your home, have to manage and make sure, this is for me personally, where I have to navigate through this with children. So all of that kind of thrown together makes your time management so critical in determining when you're going to deal with what issues. You have to be extremely organized to the point, at least for me, and what I try to teach is I have to create the specific time blocking to determine when and where things are going to happen. It's not, if I know that the kids have school from a certain period of time, that time gets blocked off. So then I know that I have to either not be involved in things that require conversations, etc. And then additionally, when it's things that are very important and valuable to my business and my world, I have to block that time out, and that has to be communicated to the entire remote household. So I've had to get much more organized with how I communicate, and sometimes it works and sometimes it doesn't. But if I'm not documenting it and I'm not blocking it, it can be a free-for-all.
Yeah, you got to really schedule it. And, this whole concept of all of a sudden the kids being part of your daily life that, for your working career, generally they were not part of your working life. They didn't come to work with you. And, on top of the fact that they are not used to having mom or dad easily accessible in the same building with them all day long, that's a challenge, right? And Danny, I think you've got young kids. You single parent. You face some of this challenge. Have you, from a distraction standpoint, is there something you've done to be able to manage the interruptions from your children while you're trying to get stuff done?
Well, I think, one of the key things that I try to do, so the answer is yes. And to Tony's point with some success and some failure at times, but yeah, my kids are grade school level, so they have quite a bit of need still. They're becoming more independent, but they're not totally independent. So one of the things that I've found has been really helpful is to try and schedule at least some time in between my Zoom calls and my meetings and things like that, so that I can check in on them. And then I can tell them, okay, the next half an hour, I'm going to be on a call and you can't interrupt me unless, one of the dog's tails is on fire or something like that. So they've done pretty well with that, where I have those opportunities in between things to check in with them and make sure they're okay. And then I tell them that, when the clock hits 9:30, I'll be done with that call and you can come back in. But until then, it has to be an emergency. And they've done pretty well with that. So it kind of goes back to Tony's point of setting expectations with people I work with, and also setting some expectations inside my own home. and then just trying to block time, make those blocks of time, but also make some breaks in between.
Yeah. And I'm watching my wife, who is not used to working from home, and she's working really hard. But I can see this. It's one of the very common distractions is a lot of phone calls and texts, maybe a little extra social media distraction because there's so many funny things coming across on social media. And block and being able to block out those kind of distractions. Maybe if you got stuff to do, like Tony, you were saying, I've got to block that time, and I cannot be looking at my smartphone, right? You schedule some time for your distractions, and you don't have to respond to every text right away, or you don't have to answer every phone call. Don't allow because emails now are going to be a big distraction too, because there's going to be more emails than you've ever faced before. It's okay to check those on a rotating basis. You don't have to read every email. And in fact, to Tony's point, if you want to get something done today and it's an important project, do not begin your day by reading an email. Just go right into your project. Right, Tony?
Yeah, that's, it's just one of those things where everybody kind of has what their prime time is. So to your point, my prime time is first thing in the morning. So I try to knock out all the most difficult projects first thing. And because if I start looking at emails and phone calls and things like that early on, it puts me behind. So I want to knock it out early.
Yeah, and that is my number one. That's why I feel like is the biggest obstacle is not scheduling time for those overwhelming tasks. And I know me, I am so easily distracted. In fact, sometimes I have to keep the blinds in my office closed so I don't see people walking by. I live in a place that's got a lot of street traffic out here, and people walking by and people talking, and I'm distracted by that. If I don't keep those blinds closed, and if I don't schedule time on my calendar between this hour and this hour to get that done, and making sure that I don't look at anything else, it's probably not going to get done. It's like scheduling time to shoot a video with you guys. If we don't have that on the calendar, it's not going to present itself. So it's really important. I think yours and mine, Tony, are a little blended in that you've got to schedule time for those big overwhelming tasks. They're not going to go away. And you may have even more big projects and on long-term plans that have to get done now more than ever because of the situation we're in. Danny, you see anybody doing anything differently? What's another obstacle you feel strongly about?
Well, I think one of the obstacles that I'm seeing a lot is, and this is an obstacle we cover normally, but I think it's exacerbated in this situation, is an inability to say no. And I think the reason that becomes exacerbated when we're working remotely is now we don't necessarily have a start and an end to our day. It's just, if you're awake, you're on call. If you're awake, then you're working. And so, and with aside from all these other distractions that can take us away, but the day doesn't really have a start and an end anymore.
Nobody's sliding down the dinosaur tail, right? Yabba dabba doo.
Yeah, I'm not clocking in. I'm not punching in. It's like if I'm awake, I'm switched on, right? Or I'm expected to be switched on until I'm switched off. So I think it just comes back to the other points that were made, that we need to be real specific about what the expectations are. We need to be more realistic than ever about what expectations are, because our normal expectations might not be realistic right now. And we do have to be conscientious that there still needs to be a start and an end to the day. So one of the things I coach people on when they feel like they're being overwhelmed by a manager, they're getting too much dumped on them, and they just know the situation's unprecedented, so they've got to help any way they can. They're not going to say no. What I usually coach people is, for them to explain what their current priorities are, and then ask their manager to confirm where this new task fits in to those priorities. And that will help them stay in alignment with their manager about what tasks are most critical, and also might help their manager realize that, gosh, they already have a lot on their plate that's really high priority. I'm gonna sit this one out for a while and maybe come back with tomorrow or the next.
Yeah, so that's always been one of my biggest challenges is I'll take on way more than I can ever consume and ever get done. And that's one of the best tips, Danny, in the world, is to say, okay, I'm more than happy to do that. Where do you want me to put it on the list, right?
Yeah.
And what do you want me to take off? Where you want me to move a priority? Because listen, as a boss, as a manager, it's real easy to give tasks and give duties, and what direct report's going to say, no, I'm not doing that. They're all going to take it. So it's that one extra step, which is a really great tip, Danny, that, hey, okay, great, I'll get that done, but what do you want me to move around? Right.
Yeah, and I think as the direct report or as the manager, if you explain why your current priorities are in the order that they are, we're all going to have different opinions right now in an unprecedented time about what truly is number one versus number three. But if you explain the rationale of how you got there and it's relatively sound, let's not split hairs about what's number one and what's number two. Let's go with those priorities. Let's get number one done first and get number two done second. And then if we have this additional work that needs to get layered in, let's understand where that fits on the priority list.
All right. Be able to prioritize. I love it. I love it. So, Tony, your number one obstacle in your mind that people are facing right now is being able to manage your distractions. And Danny, yours is their inability to say no, being able to manage no. And mine is scheduling overwhelming tasks at the right time of day. And Tony, you talked about that a little bit, is making sure you're doing it when you are most productive. Most people, I think our minds are fresher first thing in the morning, but not everybody's like that. And you got to manage around what we were also talking about with the kids. And if you've got a big task, you might want to get that done before the kids get up, or you might want to do it after the kids go to bed. But just pick that time and get it on the calendar.
Yeah, we can all sit here and talk about all these obstacles and what we're currently doing, but none of us are proficient at it. It's a trial and error.
Hey, speak for yourself.
Okay, well, I will speak for myself then. So it's about practicing and trying to figure out in this new world where that fits in, and I still come to the same conclusion that when we come out of this, our time management is going to be so much more efficient than it was before, because we'd be so good at being able to block out, when we can get things accomplished. And if, to your point, Vaughn, about tackling those big projects, and trying to fit that in a small window, imagine what happens when the window gets a little bit bigger, how much more we'll be able to accomplish.
Yeah. Well, good stuff, guys. Thanks so much for sharing that with us. Thank you all for watching, and we'll be talking to you all later.
Thanks, guys.